Nipsey Hussle. He was born Ermias Joseph Asghedom in 1985 and raised in the Crenshaw district of South Los Angeles. He grew up in a working-class, often turbulent environment, joined the Rolling 60s as a teenager, and eventually shifted toward music as his path forward. Through mixtapes like Slossin' Boy, Bullets Ain't Got No Name, and The Marathon, he built a loyal grassroots following. By the time Victory Lap earned a Grammy nomination, he had become more than an artist. He was an entrepreneur, a mentor, and a symbol of self-made progress for his community.
In terms of playing my role, because the overall operation, obviously it's bigger than music now.
Yeah.
All real businesses that have employees and take administration and take everybody being committed, definitely feel responsible.
Yeah.
Because everybody's committed to my dream.
But everything changed on March 31st, 2019. That afternoon, Nipsey pulled up to the Marathon clothing store at Crenshaw and Slauson, his home turf. He wasn't scheduled to appear and didn't have security with him. He was simply there to get clothes for a friend who had just come home from prison. Eric Holder arrived in a white Chevy Cruze. He walked over, shook Nipsey's hand, and the two had a brief conversation. Witnesses later testified that Nipsey told Holder he had heard rumors of paperwork, street slang implying snitching. Nipsey didn't threaten him, but the comment shook Holder. Holder left the lot, circled the block, loaded 2 firearms, and returned minutes later. Without warning, he approached Nipsey and opened fire, hitting him multiple times. 2 other men were injured in the shooting. As Holder ran back to the car, he kicked Nipsey on the ground before leaving. Nipsey was rushed to the hospital and pronounced dead at 33.
It's the dramatic last video of rapper Nipsey Hussle, gunned down in Los Angeles.
Oh my goodness!
The killing sent shockwaves through Los Angeles. Thousands gathered at the site, and memorials appeared across the city as people mourned the loss of a man who invested in his neighborhood and represented hope for real change. Even those who weren't fans of his music felt the weight of the tragedy. Eric Holder was arrested 2 days later in Bellflower. After a lengthy trial, he was convicted of first-degree murder, 2 counts of attempted voluntary manslaughter, and firearm enhancements. In February 2023, Holder was sentenced to 60 years to life in prison, effectively ensuring he will spend the rest of his life behind bars. Doe B. Born Glenn Lamar Thomas in 1991, was a rising rapper from Montgomery, Alabama. He grew up in a tough environment, survived a shooting at 17 that left him wearing an eye patch for the rest of his life, and used music as his way out. He dropped mixtapes like Trap Life and Baby Jesus, signed with T.I.'s Grand Hustle, and scored a breakout hit with Let Me Find Out. His career was just starting to take off, but his life was unfortunately cut off. On December 28, 2013, Doe B went out to the Centennial Hill Bar and Grill in Montgomery, a place with a long history of shootings and trouble, even though it had recently rebranded and claimed to be turning things around. That night wasn't a concert or a performance. It was just a regular club night packed with people and holiday season energy. Sometime after 1 a.m., an argument broke out inside. A bottle was thrown, a mirror shattered, and within seconds, gunshots ripped through the crowd. People screamed and ran for the exits as bullets flew in every direction. Doe B was hit multiple times and rushed to a nearby hospital where he was pronounced dead at just 22 years old. 2 other people also lost their lives. 21-year-old Troy University student Kimberle Briauna Johnson, who had been celebrating her birthday, and 20-year-old Timnarius Hamilton, who died from his injuries a few days later. Several others were wounded but survived. The police quickly identified suspects. Jason McWilliams turned himself in the next day, with detectives saying the shooting came from an ongoing dispute between him and Doe B.
This is Jason Quan McWilliams. Police say he turned himself in. They say he's responsible for the shooting deaths of rapper Glenn Thomas, also known as Doe B, and Troy University student Kimberle Johnson.
Darius Thomas turned himself in shortly after and later received an 85-year sentence for the 3 deaths. A third man, Taboris Mock, was also charged later and got 15 years. The city shut the club down immediately, calling it a threat to public safety. The news shook the rap world. T.I., Drake, Juicy J, and others posted tributes, and Doe B's mother publicly forgave one of the shooters years later. Big Pokey. He grew up on Houston's South Side and first made a name for himself as a football standout at Yates High School, where he formed a close bond with George Floyd. Floyd was a year ahead of him on the team, and his death in 2020 would later ignite nationwide protests and a historic push for racial justice. After high school, Pokey shifted into music and became a key part of DJ Screw's Screwed Up Clique. His deep voice, relaxed delivery, and appearances on classics like June 27th helped shape the chopped and screwed style that would influence an entire generation of artists.
Yo, and I'm in the more tie, more jeans, though. Bitch, I'm in my low. Switching lanes, acting bad, gripping on remote. Steady dropping tops.
Over the years, he built a respected legacy with albums like The Hardest Pit in the Litter and Disguise the Limit, and collaborations with Paul Wall, Lil Keke, Big Mo, and many more. Big Pokey's final performance was on June 17, 2023 at Puro 9 Bar and Rooftop in Beaumont, Texas during a Juneteenth celebration. The crowd was excited, the music was flowing, and Pokey was in the middle of performing when he suddenly took a deep gasp into the microphone. A heartbeat later, he collapsed backward onto the stage. People rushed toward him, and a nurse who started CPR right on the floor. Paramedics arrived before midnight and took over, then rushed him to Christus St. Elizabeth Hospital. Early the next morning, June 18th, he was pronounced dead.
Houston rap community in mourning tonight after the death of the rapper known as Big Pokey. His real name, Milton Powell, and this came after what happened on stage last night.
It took weeks before officials confirmed what happened. A full autopsy and toxicology test were ordered, and on August 2nd, the final results came back. Big Pokey had died from a massive heart attack caused by hypertensive and atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. In simple terms, plaque had built up in his arteries, narrowing them, and high blood pressure had made the situation even more dangerous. That mix can lead to a sudden, fatal cardiac event with little warning. Pokey's family released a statement asking for privacy and remembering him with love. Houston's mayor, Sylvester Turner, called him a giant of the city's hip-hop scene. Artists like Bun B, Paul Wall, Slim Thug, Lil Flip, and many others posted emotional tributes, describing him as humble, loyal, and respected by everyone who knew him. The venue where he collapsed held a memorial soon after, and a week later, DJ Screw Day on June 27th became an unofficial tribute to Pokey. Crowds packed the Southside Sporting Club, rapping his lines word for word. Indian Red Boy. Zerael Dijon Rivera, known professionally as Indian Red Boy, was a young rapper from Long Beach, California. He began recording music on his laptop as a teenager, releasing projects like Game Over in 2020, EVA in 2021, and several posthumous albums that continue to gain attention. Though still early in his career, his music reflected the streets he grew up in, with an experimental approach to rap. His life took a tragic turn months before his death, when a Nipsey Hussle mural in the Crenshaw district was vandalized by a friend known as Baby Capone. Indian Red Boy appeared in a video standing with Capone, laughing and posing in front of the defaced mural. While he didn't actually spray paint the mural, his presence in the video made him complicit in the disrespect, which angered many in Los Angeles who respected Nipsey Hussle across gang lines. On July 8th, Indian Red Boy was in a gated apartment complex in Hawthorne, California, sitting in his car and chatting with Capone on Instagram Live. Around 4:10 p.m., a gunman approached on foot and opened fire. He was struck multiple times, including in the head, while trying to call for help on the live stream. Blood poured from his nose as he struggled to speak, telling his friend to get help and revealing his location. The shooting was caught on video and viewers watched in real time as he slipped away. Police arrived shortly after and confirmed he had multiple gunshot wounds. Indian Red Boy was pronounced dead at the scene at just 21 years old.
They responded earlier this evening to reports of a man who was shot in the face and died at the scene. So again, coroners just wrapped up their investigation. We're watching the family over here on the side, very distraught, as you can imagine.
Hawthorne police noted he appeared to have been targeted. An investigation suggested his involvement with Capone in the mural incident made him a target for retaliation. Some street accounts also point to alternative motives involving gang conflicts and personal disputes, but the mainstream theory holds that his death was tied to the Nipsey Hussle mural disrespect. XXXTentacion. He was born on January 23, 1998 in Plantation, Florida, and raised in Lauderhill. His childhood was rough. His father spent years in prison, his mother struggled, and he was largely raised by his grandmother. By his teens, he had already been in fights, kicked out of school, and diagnosed with bipolar disorder. He spent time in juvenile detention where he met Ski Mask and Slump God, and later started releasing music on SoundCloud. His style was emotional, dark, and raw. At 19, he blew up with his album 17, followed by Question Mark, which debuted at #1 in 2018 and produced the massive hit Sad. But despite rising fast, he was surrounded by controversy, especially a high-profile domestic violence case that remained unresolved when he died. On June 18, 2018, around 3 p.m., XXXTentacion visited Riva Motorsports in Deerfield Beach, Florida. Before going there, he had withdrawn $50,000 in cash from Bank of America, placing it in a Louis Vuitton bag. A group of 4 men, Michael Boatwright, Dedrick Williams, Trayvon Newsom, and Robert Allen, spotted him at the bank and followed him to the dealership in a dark Dodge Journey. While X was leaving Riva with a step-uncle, the SUV suddenly blocked his BMW i8. 2 masked gunmen jumped out with guns drawn. There was a short struggle, about 45 seconds, as they demanded his bag. During that confrontation, he was shot multiple times, with bullets hitting his neck and damaging vital arteries. The men grabbed the bag of cash, fled in the Dodge Journey, and left him critically wounded behind the wheel. Witnesses rushed over, but he had no pulse. He was taken to a nearby hospital and pronounced dead at 4:51 p.m. at just 20 years old.
And then men jump out of the vehicle and confront XXXTentacion. One of the men goes into his car. Then there's a confrontation and a robbery, and the men shoot and kill the talented young artist.
The investigation moved quickly. Williams was identified from his face tattoos on surveillance footage. Allen was caught in Georgia and later cooperated with prosecutors. Phone records, video evidence, and the suspect's own recordings flashing stolen money all tie them to the murder. In 2023, after a month-long trial, Boatwright, Williams, and Newsom were each convicted of first-degree murder and armed robbery. On April 6, 2023, all 3 were sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole. Robert Allen, who testified for the state, pleaded guilty to a lesser charge and awaited separate sentencing. DaGod. She was a rising rapper from Oakland, California. She was deeply connected to her own community, supporting Black-owned businesses and performing at local events rather than traditional clubs. Her music, including albums like EVA 2021 and X-Woodpack 2023, reflected her Bay Area roots, blending street storytelling with messages of uplift and pride. DaGod built a loyal following through meet-and-greet appearances, social media, and collaborations with local artists, earning respect both as an entertainer and as a community figure. On July 13, 2024, DaGod attended the grand reopening of Glamour Beauty Shop at 40th and Telegraph in Oakland. She was seated outside the shop on a decorative throne, greeting fans and taking photos. Around 5 p.m., an argument escalated near the event and a gunman opened fire. DaGod was hit and collapsed on the sidewalk outside the gate. Another bystander was injured but survived. Witnesses described chaos, with people ducking into a nearby donut shop and videos capturing the aftermath, though not the actual moment of the shooting.
A woman shot dead in broad daylight.
Yeah, everybody ducked and hide behind the cars and stuff.
It was supposed to be a celebration. Friends identified the woman killed as Aliana Green, known as Oakland rapper DaGod.
Police suggested the shooting may have come from a personal dispute, though no confirmed motive has been made public. Online speculation especially connected it to her song X-Woodpack, which was a wild, over-the-top diss aimed at an ex-boyfriend. She used exaggerated imagery, fake tombstones, masks, clown symbolism, and even admitted in interviews that she intentionally made it extra childish.
That's about to drop called X-Woodpack, smoking on my X.
You shouldn't talk about things like that in the
But them. We rich.
Okay.
What y'all gonna do?
However, online the project took on a life of its own. Some people claimed she was confessing to killing her ex, while others insisted it was just Bay Area rap theatrics. Either way, many believe this may have played a role in her death. 5 days later, Dominic Gates, also known as BNC4 Nero, was arrested and charged with her murder. Gates, a local rapper, had a prior criminal history, including a 2014 conviction related to pimping a minor. A month later, they arrested 32-year-old Richard Romano. Both were charged with the murder, but by 2025, both men took plea deals, not for murder, but for felony gun possession. They each received 2 years in prison. Freaky Ta. Talik Raymond Rogers, better known as Freaky Ta, was born on May 14, 1971 in Queens, New York. He grew up in South Jamaica and eventually joined the Lost Boys, becoming the loud, energetic spark that kept the group's music alive. But despite his rising success, the streets around him were filled with tension that had nothing to do with him and would eventually take his life. The trouble started in late 1998 when someone robbed a member of the Lost Boys. The robber wasn't connected to Freaky Ta at all, but people in the neighborhood blamed a small group called the Hellraisers. 1 month later, someone trying to protect Lost Boys retaliated and killed Michael Saunders, a young man who had absolutely nothing to do with the robbery. That mistake set off a chain of revenge that spiraled out of control. Michael's half-brother, Kelvin Jones, spent months searching for the man who killed him. He never found the real shooter. All he knew was that the gunman supposedly hung around the Lost Boys. So when he heard the group was attending a birthday party for Mr. Cheeks at the Sheraton Hotel near JFK Airport on March 27, 1999, he waited outside with 2 accomplices. A little after 4 a.m., Freaky Ta walked out of the hotel, laughing and saying goodbye to friends. Jones, wearing a ski mask, ran up behind him and shot him in the back of the head at point-blank range. Ta was rushed to the hospital but pronounced dead at 4:20 a.m. He was only 27 years old. Jones would later admit he had killed the wrong man. Within weeks, all 3 men involved were arrested. Kelvin Jones eventually pleaded guilty and received 15 years to life in prison. Raheem Fletcher got 7 years for helping, and Ryan Fritsch, the getaway driver, was also convicted. Without Ta, Lost Boys lost their energy and momentum. Their next album, released months later, couldn't recover from the tragedy. Fatman Scoop. Born Isaac Freeman III, grew up in Harlem and got his nickname as a kid because he loved ice cream so much that his uncle called him Fatman Scoop. Before fame, he bounced around record label internships and slowly found his lane as a hype man with a loud, booming voice that stood out everywhere he went. He would go on to work with huge names like Missy Elliott, Ciara, Mariah Carey, Timbaland, the Yin Yang Twins, and even crossed into EDM with DJs like Skrillex and Afrojack. Scoop also became a recognizable radio personality at New York's Hot 97, where his energy turned him into a staple of the station.
So where did Fatman Scoop come from, the name?
Well, it actually came from my Uncle Jack, one of my favorite uncles.
Yeah.
And he used to take me out all the time to eat. Like, he was the uncle that fed me and would take me to get ice cream all the time.
On August 30th, Fatman Scoop was performing at the Green and Gold Party in Hamden, Connecticut, a free summer show that had been rescheduled from an earlier rainy date. He hit the stage shirtless and energetic, doing what he was known for, hyping the crowd, pacing the stage, and shouting into the mic. Fan videos show him walking toward the raised DJ booth, calling out "Hamden, make some noise." His voice suddenly sounded off, slightly slurred, but he kept talking while climbing onto the platform. Moments later, he collapsed behind the booth. People near the stage rushed to help. Paramedics climbed onto the platform and began performing chest compressions as the music cut off and the crowd went silent. Another performer quickly asked everyone to pray while medical teams continued CPR. Scoop was taken out on a stretcher and rushed to the hospital, but he was pronounced dead shortly after arriving.
Isaac Freeman, known professionally as Fatman Scoop, was performing at Hamden Town Center Park when he experienced a medical emergency and was rushed to the hospital.
At first, officials didn't say what caused his death. A few weeks later, the Connecticut Medical Examiner confirmed he died from hypertensive and atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, a natural cause. In simple terms, years of high blood pressure and plaque buildup in his arteries created the conditions for a sudden heart event, especially during a high-energy performance. His death hit the music world immediately. Missy Elliott, Hot 97, longtime collaborators, and fans shared emotional tributes, praising his voice, personality, and impact. Vigils followed in Hamden and at Harlem's Apollo Theater. The Jacka. Dominic Newton, better known as the Jacka, and later by his Islamic name Shahid Akbar, was born in Pittsburgh, California in 1977 to 2 teenage parents. He grew up fast, became the family's provider as a teen, and got caught up in the streets early. At 18, he went to prison on robbery and carjacking charges, which is how he got the name the Jacka. After converting to Islam, he tried to balance being a devout Muslim with being a rapper who told raw street stories. He broke into music with Sibo's Mob Figures, later built a strong solo career, stayed independent, and became one of the Bay Area's most respected voices.
What inspired me to want to be a part of hip-hop, I mean, just the personality of the MCs first and foremost, just how they presented themselves on TV. You know what I mean?
On the night of February 2nd, 2015, the Jacka was in East Oakland near the 9400 block of MacArthur Boulevard. It was a normal Monday night. He was outside with friends hanging around in a van. Witnesses said he was relaxed, laughing, just having fun. Around 8 p.m., shots suddenly rang out. A vehicle rolled up and someone fired toward the group. People heard the gunfire from inside their homes. When they rang out, the Jacka was on the ground with a gunshot wound to the head. A neighbor tried to help but couldn't do anything. Police responded almost immediately. They were close enough to hear the shots themselves, but by the time the Jacka reached Highland Hospital, he was pronounced dead.
Witnesses said about 8:15 tonight they heard gunshots. Police tell us the victim is 37-year-old Dominic Newton. He went by the stage name the Jacka.
Word spread fast, and within hours, candles and flowers filled the corner. People kept saying the same thing. He wasn't a man with enemies. He wasn't beefing with anybody. He helped people. He gave jobs. He supported younger artists. The shooting didn't look targeted. Many believe he was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. Oakland police never named a suspect. Weeks passed with no answers, and years later, the case was still open. Rumors floated around, but nothing solid ever led to an arrest. A $20,000 reward was offered, but it changed nothing. Like many Oakland murders, especially in black neighborhoods, it faded into the long list of unsolved cases. The spot where he died became known as 94th and Jacka.